Good morning. All right, this week we're talking about foot strikes. We're talking about landings. And this is something that's quite pervasive in the running world, is that runners tend to think certain things which are really not true. So let's talk a little bit about how your foot lands. So some people think, a lot of runners tend to think that landing with a forefoot strike or landing with a midfoot strike is preventative of injury, and therein lies the problem. They think that landing with a forefoot strike is going to prevent injuries, but it doesn't prevent injuries. It never has and it never will, because there's a lot more to it than just which part of the foot you land on. So with that being such a pervasive myth that forefoot striking or midfoot striking prevents injuries, the next part of the equation is that we've got people just simply trying to change which part of the foot they land on, which again is a big problem, because forefoot striking, midfoot striking does not prevent injuries, period. What it does is it changes the location of where you get injured, because it changes where the force goes to. Now remember, we can't change how much force we produce or we encounter from the ground, because remember, when you hit the ground, the amount of force that you put into the ground is what you get back. It's ground reaction forces, okay? So we can only change that by running faster or running slower, or by taking fewer steps or taking more steps, okay? Those are the ways that we can change that. A longer stride means fewer steps, right, per minute. So back to foot landing. So if we talk about which part of the foot hits the ground first, what that really does is it tells us that the force is probably going to be higher in a certain location and lower in a certain location within your body, because the part of the foot that encounters the ground first is going to take most of the force. It's going to take a big amount of force, right? So, and of course, obviously your body is made up of different levers, and how far the point of contact is from where the muscle is, i.e. how long the lever arm is, dictates how much force it's going to encounter. So forefoot striking, midfoot striking is not preventative of injury, it just changes where the force goes, and therefore obviously it changes what injuries that we encounter, and the research supports this as well. This is kind of obvious, but it's this pervasive myth that forefoot striking, midfoot striking prevents injuries, and it doesn't. So we've got to stop thinking that the way that we hit the ground prevents injuries. It doesn't, okay? In the same way that stretching doesn't prevent injuries and strength training doesn't prevent injuries. All right, so that's the first thing. Second thing is that we have runners that think that forefoot striking, midfoot striking prevents injuries, and therefore they want to change how they hit the ground, or not how they hit the ground, but which part of the foot hits the ground first, i.e. the strike, what they call the strike, the contact point. So if you simply just change which part of the foot hits the ground first, like I've just explained, it changes where the force goes, okay? And if you've gone from, say, I don't know, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years of striking the ground in one particular way, and you just then change to another way, what that's going to do is it's going to leave a lot of tissues that have probably never experienced that amount of load, that amount of force. It's going to leave them open to injury, right? Because now you're going to impart a lot of force onto those tissues, right? And they're not ready for that, and the chances are they're probably going to get injured, because, you know, when runners change which part of their foot hits the ground first, they don't change anything else, because they've either read somewhere or heard from some idiot running influencer that you should do this, you should do that, and that's pretty much, you can pretty much guarantee I would say 95 times, 98 times out of 100 that anything you hear from a running influencer is probably a complete load of crap. and it's probably going to hurt you. It's probably going to injure you. So my advice is to not listen to what those running influencers are saying. Remember, I'm not a running influencer. I don't really care about how many followers I have. It's not about that for me. It's about getting the information out to runners. So back to foot strike. You've changed which part of your foot encounters the most force, and therefore you've changed further up the line from toes or forefoot to the ankle to the knee. That means that you've got to go through the Achilles, through the gastroc, through the soleus, through the plantaris, through the popliteus, through the peroneals, through all of these different muscles, the FHL, FDL. You've got to go through all these muscles, which are now going to encounter a whole different force, a whole different load, and you're going to do that without decreasing your mileage, most likely, and therefore you're going to leave them open and very susceptible to injury. All right. So we know that forefoot striking, midfoot striking does not prevent injuries. It doesn't reduce the amount of injuries that we suffer or that we encounter or that we see. It just changes where the injury occurs, because most likely you haven't changed your mileage, lowered your mileage to change anything, right? So the next thing is that, so you got that in your head, that changing where your foot strikes the ground makes it so that you suffer less injuries, or you get better running economy, or you get better performance, and that's just not true at all. So you change this strike point on the ground, and then you open up and leave susceptible lots of new tissues, lots of new tendons, lots of new muscles to a new force. And it really doesn't help you at all. It doesn't help you in the slightest. It doesn't really change much, all right? Because we know that through research that those things are not true, all right? So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to stop thinking about these pervasive myths that forefoot striking, midfoot striking prevents injuries or improves how you run. It just doesn't. It doesn't work that way. All right, so that's the first thing we've got to do, is just change the thinking, because you can't change anything until you change how you think, right? And you won't change how you think until you've either seen research or you've experienced an outcome that changes how you think about something, all right? And that's really the key to it all, is really the education side of running, to really kind of hone in on that information, that research, to help us see reasoning, to help us see logic that allows us to go, okay, yeah, that's right. I probably should stop thinking that, because it's just not true. All right. So the first thing of this week is we're talking about the foot strike, the initial contact with the ground. Okay, so we've got to change that thinking from I need to hit the ground with a certain part of my foot to a different thought process, which is I need to move better at all of the joints within my body that help me to produce the running movement. All right, and you're probably bored of hearing this by now, because it's the way to do it. It's the way to change or to improve how you run, is to improve how you move, to improve the ability of each joint within the running motion, the running movement, to improve how each joint moves. Okay, not to change which part of your foot hits the ground first. That's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. What's relevant is how you move, and therefore how you land on the ground, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. Okay, so today we're talking about the facts, the myths, that landing with a forefoot strike or landing with a midfoot strike is injury preventative. It's not. It's not injury preventative. It doesn't prevent injuries, okay? And most runners actually have no idea how they land, and they think that they land with a forefoot strike. They're actually still heel striking, which again is not a problem. So this kind of this thing of runners saying, oh, I'm a forefoot striker or I'm a midfoot striker, so what? It doesn't matter, because it doesn't really change, it doesn't improve much, right? And most injured runners, or if I said to you as an injured runner, I'm going to improve your running economy, I'm going to improve your running efficiency. As an injured runner, you should say, so what? I can't run, I'm injured. I'm struggling to run. not struggling with running economy or running efficiency. That shouldn't be the thing that's on your mind. It should be to run without injury, right? So changing and improving how you move is the first part of making it so that you land in a safe way, in a way that doesn't produce this huge rapid impact spike at the moment you land. Because remember, pronation is how you delay the impact spike. When you pronate well, what you're doing is you're softening the blow. I kind of describe it like a car with airbags. And you just crash your car and the airbags come out and your head goes into the airbag and it softens the blow. It doesn't take away all of the blow. You're probably still going to get a little bit sore because rapidly your head went and your chest went into an airbag. But what it's going to do is it's going to really soften the blow. And that's really what pronation does. It slows down the impact. It lessens the blow. It kind of, remember, we want bones to roll over one another, right? We want it to rotate. We want everything to rotate. So what does pronation do? Pronation is basically saying every single joint rotates around one another. So no bones are kind of colliding into one another without kind of allowing the next bone in sequence to rotate around it. And that's what we see with professional runners, is this ability to just keep this cyclical movement going and going and going on and on and on, and never stops. What happens with injured recreational runners especially is that they're not sequencing their movements, and every time their foot hits the ground, if it's landing on a forward traveling leg, you don't get that, right? Because remember, two surfaces colliding in opposite directions is not going to end well, and that's really the key to it. So landing, it really doesn't matter which part of your foot you land with. What matters is how you land on the ground. And I've said this a million times probably now, landing on a backward traveling leg is the key. It's the starting point to getting everything to then roll over the top. All right. So tomorrow we're going to talk about the next point, about landings, foot landings. Today we're all about the myth of forefoot landing, midfoot striking being injury preventative, which it isn't. It absolutely isn't. And the myth or the concept that most runners don't know how they land. They're just unaware. Their proprioception is very poor. And they think, oh yeah, I've just changed how I strike the ground. And actually they haven't, because they haven't changed how they move. Or if they have, then they've actually done it in a really bad way. So yeah, all right, that's it for today. See you tomorrow.